You thought she was your destiny. You thought love would complete you. But here is the brutal truth. The moment you put her above your mission, you began to die. Look at history. Even emperors have fallen this way. Napoleon Bonaparte, a man who commanded nations, wrote letters of desperation to Josephine, letters dripping with need. And while he built an empire, she betrayed him. Do you understand the weight of that? The conqueror of Europe, begging for the affection of a woman who didn't see his fire anymore. This is not just about Napoleon. This is about you. The man who abandoned his mountain to plant flowers in her garden. The man who traded the iron of his ambition for the fragile approval of a smile. You thought this was love, but love without mission is slavery with perfume, and she will not save you. She never could. Women are nothing but machines for producing children, Napoleon once said. Harsh? Maybe. But he wasn't speaking as a poet. He was speaking as a man who had seen the battlefield, not just of war, but of love. He understood that a man who abandons his mission for the warmth of a woman's embrace is already lost, not because she is evil, but because she is not built to carry the weight of his destiny. Napoleon's tragedy with Josephine is the perfect warning. While he was writing desperate letters, begging for her attention, she was entertaining other lovers. The Emperor of France, the man who reshaped Europe, was reduced to a prisoner of his own feelings. Do you see the lesson? Greatness and need cannot coexist. A man who kneels for affection loses the posture required to rule his life. He once commanded armies without hesitation, but love turned him hesitant, emotional, distracted. The very fire that made him extraordinary was dimmed by the illusion of romantic salvation. And this is the trap every man faces. The belief that she will love you more if you give up your edge, your mission, your empire for her comfort. Napoleon discovered the bitter truth. Most women do not want the storm of greatness. They want the warmth of predictability. They do not want the man consumed by vision. They want the man who will sit still and orbit them. And when you stop being the storm, when you stop climbing the mountain, you become replaceable. Napoleon's life shouts the same warning he learned too late. Do not give up your empire, even for love. Because love without respect is just a throne you've abandoned to kneel on the ground. You've been sold a lie since the day you were born. They told you to chase love, to believe that finding the one was the highest calling of a man's life. But here is the brutal truth. Women don't love you. They love what you represent. They love the man who stands unshaken, not the man who bends for their comfort. And the moment you make her your mission, you have already lost her respect. The first illusion that needs to be shattered is this. She is not your reward. You were not born to orbit her life like a moon around a fragile planet. You were born to burn, to build, to conquer your own world. But when you confuse her admiration for your purpose, you trade your strength for scraps of validation. You give, hoping to be seen. But a man who gives too much becomes invisible. Napoleon understood this too late. He believed that Josephine's love would complete him, that her affection would be the anchor to his greatness. But she didn't fall for the man who begged. She fell for the man who conquered. The moment he became a slave to his emotions, he became less of a man in her eyes. Do you see the pattern? Women admire strength, not sacrifice. They crave the man who can walk away, not the one who waits by the door. You think you love her, but what you truly love is the reflection of yourself in her eyes. And when that reflection fades, when she stops validating you, your world crumbles because your world wasn't yours to begin with. It was hers. You handed over your identity in exchange for affection, and now you are hollow. Ask yourself this. If tomorrow she left, who would you be? Would your mission remain? Would your fire still burn? Or would you collapse because everything you are is tied to the idea of her? That is not love. That is worship. And worship of anything but your mission is a slow death. Napoleon's life whispers the truth you don't want to hear. The man who abandons his mission for love loses both. He was not a king, not a general, not even a man of great power. He was just like you. He had a dream, a path, a fire that burned in his chest. For years he worked in silence, long nights, empty pockets, but a mind filled with vision. He believed that if he built himself, the world would notice. Then she came. She saw his hunger, his potential. She whispered words that made him believe he was already enough, that he didn't need to keep climbing, that he could stop and rest in the safety of her arms. At first, he resisted. He said, "I have a mission." But her smile was soft, and her affection was sweet. He convinced himself that she would love him more if he gave her everything. So he did. He slowed his pace. He spent his nights with her instead of with his plans. He traded the mountain for the valley, his vision for her approval. For a while it felt like paradise. She was grateful, or at least she seemed to be. She praised him, held him, told him he was the man she had always dreamed of. And he believed her. But something shifted. The man she once admired began to fade. His ambition dulled. His spine bent under the weight of her moods. He stopped challenging her. He stopped leading. He thought his softness would earn her love. But the more he gave, the colder she became. One day he came home to silence. Her bags were packed. No explanation, no apology. She simply looked at him and said, "You're not the man I met." He stood there, hollow, watching the woman he had sacrificed everything for walk out the door. Not because she was cruel, but because he had killed the very man she once respected. And that is the story of millions of men. Men who abandon their mission for love only to lose both. This is not a fairy tale. It is a warning. She is not the storm you think she is. She is the wind that tests your fortress, the whisper that lures you to open the gates. Women by their nature do not conquer you directly. They invite you to conquer yourself or to surrender. They do not strike. They wait. They do not demand. They suggest. And when you collapse at the suggestion, the game is already over. Napoleon learned this the hard way. Josephine never had to scream at him to bend. She only had to show her absence, her cool detachment, and he crumbled, writing desperate letters from the battlefield. The man who made kings tremble could not hold his frame with one woman. Why? Because he allowed her silence to define his worth. Understand this. A woman will test not by words, but by withdrawal. She will go quiet, and in that silence, she will measure you. Do you panic? Do you beg? Do you chase? If you do, you reveal that your strength was an act, that beneath the armor, you are just another man afraid to lose her smile. A woman is not chaos. She is nature, and nature always seeks the strongest. She doesn't want the tree that bends at every breeze. She wants the oak that stands firm through storms. She doesn't want the man who abandons his mission to keep her happy. She wants the man who walks his path regardless of her moods, because that path is what makes him a man worth following. But men today have forgotten this. They confuse romance with surrender. They hand over their mission like a gift, believing that self-erasure is the price of love. And yet the moment you orbit her world, she loses attraction. Why? Because you were never supposed to orbit her. You were meant to be the mountain she admires from below, steady, unmoved, untamed. Women are drawn to strength like rivers to the sea. Not the strength of muscle, but the strength of focus, of direction, of presence. When you abandon that for her, you stop being the force she once respected. She is not evil for testing you. She is simply following her instinct, the same instinct that once made her choose you. Stop blaming her. Stop calling her manipulative, heartless, or ungrateful. The brutal truth is you were not betrayed. You volunteered. You were the one who placed your mission on the altar and called it love. You were the one who abandoned the fire inside you to warm yourself at the fragile flame of her approval. Napoleon, for all his genius, made this same mistake. He didn't lose Josephine because he wasn't powerful enough. He lost her because for a time he became smaller than the man she first admired. He thought love meant worship. He thought that by softening, by pouring all his energy into her, he would be loved more. But women don't love men who kneel. They respect men who stand. Every man who blames women for his downfall is still asleep. She didn't seduce you into weakness. You seduced yourself with the idea that her affection was the prize. You gave her the throne, then cursed her for sitting on it. The problem isn't that women test you. The problem is that you crumble. You beg for clarity. You send desperate messages. You erase your own boundaries just to avoid her disapproval. And in doing so, you teach her something deadly, that you can be moved. You need to understand this. Attraction is not built on need. When you chase, when you explain, when you compromise your standards for her comfort, you stop being a man and start being a reflection of her moods, and no woman can respect that. The pain you feel is not because of what she did to you. It's because of what you stopped doing for yourself. You stopped building. You stopped leading. You stopped choosing yourself. Blame is a distraction. You want to know who destroyed your mission? Look in the mirror. The day you started making her approval more important than your purpose was the day you began to vanish. But there is good news. The same way you gave it away, you can take it back. There is a moment every man must face. The moment he realizes that true strength is not in holding on, but in letting go. Not because he is bitter, but because his soul cannot be chained. Napoleon learned this when Josephine's loyalty wavered. As emperor, he could command armies, but not her heart. He discovered the power of detachment too late, but you don't have to. The ability to walk away is not just a tactic. It is the proof of your sovereignty. A man who cannot walk away is already owned. Walking away is not about playing games. It's not about making her chase you. It's about understanding that no woman, no relationship, no fleeting feeling is worth the price of your mission. Your purpose is your fortress. When you abandon it to please her, you are already conquered. A man who can walk away without anger is the most dangerous man alive. Why? Because he cannot be manipulated. He doesn't cling. He doesn't beg. He doesn't drown in the tides of her silence. His value does not come from her validation. It radiates from within, like fire that needs no oxygen but its own will. Most men fear losing her because they've made her their entire identity. But when you walk away, you remind yourself that you are not defined by who stays. You are defined by the mountain you climb, with or without her watching. Ask yourself, can you stand alone? Can you face her leaving, her disapproval, her silence, and still remain unshaken? If not, you are still a boy seeking approval, not a man living by principle. The power of walking away is the power of choice. It is saying, I choose me, my mission, my life over any illusion of love that asks me to crawl. And paradoxically, this is the only posture that earns true respect. A man's life does not begin when he falls in love. It begins when he chooses his mountain. When he understands that his purpose, his vision, his relentless climb toward greatness is not optional. It is who he is. Without it, he is nothing but a shadow waiting for someone else's approval to define him. Napoleon's life is a testament to this. Before Josephine, before the betrayals, before the desperate letters, he was a man consumed by destiny. His eyes were fixed on the horizon, on conquests, on carving his name into history. It was this fire, this unstoppable momentum, that made the world kneel before him. But when he let love pull him away from the mountain, even for a moment, he faltered. And Josephine, like nature itself, responded not with more affection, but with distance. You must understand this. A woman cannot follow a man who abandons his mission. She might stay with you, but she will not admire you. She might offer comfort, but she will no longer feel the fire that once drew her in. She will see what you refuse to see, that you have traded your edge for ease, your purpose for her fleeting approval. And the cruel truth is, she will resent you for it. But solitude is not your enemy. It is your forge. The mountain is where you suffer, bleed, and sharpen your soul. It is where you find the man who cannot be shaken by love or loss, because he knows his value lies not in being chosen, but in choosing himself. The path of greatness is a lonely path, but it is the only one that leaves a mark. Women, comfort, applause, all of these are temporary. But your work, your creation, your mission, these are eternal. These, do not be fooled by the warmth of a temporary embrace. It feels good now, but it will cost you everything. The man who climbs alone, who builds his fortress with his own blood and time, is the man who will be remembered. And when he stands at the peak, he doesn't need her approval, because the world itself bows in silence. You didn't lose her. You lost yourself when you abandoned your mission. That is the truth no one wants to say out loud. The day you chose her over your purpose, you stopped being the man she was drawn to. You became soft, predictable, safe, and in her silence, she told you everything. Napoleon's downfall was not his defeat on the battlefield. It was the moment he allowed his heart to rule his empire. Josephine didn't destroy him. He destroyed himself the moment he knelt, the moment he wrote letters of longing instead of orders of war. Do you see it now? She was never meant to be your reason for living. She was meant to be a companion to your mission, not the mission itself. And when you confuse the two, you pay with your soul. You were never supposed to save her. You were supposed to save yourself, to stand as a man who doesn't need her love to breathe, who doesn't need her smile to feel alive. That is the man she cannot leave, because that is the man who is free. So ask yourself, are you ready to burn the illusions? Are you ready to rise again? If you are, like, share, and subscribe, and join us in rebuilding the men the world forgot. Your mission begins now.